If you're recording and mixing vocals here in GarageBand on your iPhone or your iPad, then one of the biggest challenges is how to get your vocals to sit right in the mix. So in this video, I'm going to show you how we can use the compressor here in GarageBand to get that done. Let's go. Hi, my name is Pete and this is Studio Live today. Now, if you want to learn all about creating in GarageBand, consider subscribing, and also at the end of this video will be a link to my complete GarageBand Quick Jam series to get you right up to speed. Let's get started now with some vocal compression. So to get to our compressor, we tap on any of these audio recorded tracks. I'm going to choose the vocal though, and tap on the mixer icon. Now on your iPads and larger iPhones, it'll be in the top left. On a smaller iPhone, it may be in the top right. Go into your mixer, go down to plugins and EQ, and your compressor is at the very top there, and it's on by default. In fact, if we go to edit, it can't actually be added or removed. It's on here by default. So to change our compressor settings, we tap the drop down arrow to the right here, and now we can dial in our threshold, our ratio, attack, gain, and mix. And I'll explain what all of those do as we go through in this video. But for now, let's take a quick listen to this vocal without compression, and then I'll turn the compressor on just so that you can hear what it is actually doing. So here's a line of these vocals without the compressor.
It's a hope of kings and peasants too.
And now let's turn on the compressor with these settings that I've dialed in, and here it is with the compressor.
It's a hope of kings and peasants too.
So what it's doing is it's just lifting that volume and getting your vocals to sit just above the mix. Now you might be thinking, why wouldn't I just use my volume slider? Why can't I just turn the volume up? Well, compression does something slightly different to volume. What you're actually doing in here with compression is that you are reducing the volume. So you're cutting off the peaks of your audio, and then you're actually bringing the whole audio up. And we'll explain this more as we dive into all of these different settings that we have here on the compressor. But compression can be a great way to get a good balanced volume where you're actually lifting everything up, as opposed to just turning up the peaks of your volume, which is what your volume fader will do. So how do we dial in compression here on our vocals or any other track in GarageBand? Well, the three key measures that we have here is our compressor threshold, our ratio, and then our attack. We can then adjust the gain either down or up after we've done our compression, and we can actually mix, which means how much of this compression will be mixed in with the original signal, everything from 0% up to 100%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solo this vocal track, and we'll work through this, and I'll show you how I approach dialing in compression. Now, for demonstration purposes, I've soloed this vocal, but I do suggest that you actually do your compression moves with the vocal in the mix. But let's just take a listen to the vocal by itself.
It's a common misconception.
So that's with the compressor on. If we turn that off now,
It's a thing that many fear.
and it's very subtle. So the compression I have here is not very much. In fact, I've put that gain down a little bit there. So the things that we want to keep in mind, ratio is the most important thing in my view, because this is how much compression is actually taking place. Second most important is our threshold, because this is what volume level the compressor will kick in. So for instance, if we have the threshold set down like this and the ratio set right up here, take a listen to what happens.
That the comfort that we have right now.
You can hear there that when the compressor's engaged, it is very full on. So this is saying that anything that is, once it hits minus 30 dB, which is not very loud, it's going to start compressing. So this will make sure that the compressor is basically on all the time. The more we go up here, the less the compressor's on, to the point where if we're up here, it's actually going to be, you can see this vocal sound here is not going to be up at minus 10 dB. It's probably sitting around about here. So to get any compression on your sound, and this is something that I see folks do wrong, they'll have their ratio up here, but then they'll have their threshold here, and they're wondering why they're getting no compression. What you need to do is have your threshold and dial it down. So let's do this now. I'll come into a section here where the vocal's a little bit more consistent, and then we will hit play, and I'll dial this threshold in, and you'll hear it starting to take effect. In fact, I'll turn the ratio up so you can hear this better.
The only thing that stays the same is that things will change.
So you can hear there that as I'm going to the left there, the compression's getting more heavy and to the point where it's actually over compressed. So once I get down here, it's on all the time, and with a high ratio, you're going to get too much compression. So what I'll do is I'll dial on the ratio that I think I'd have for a vocal like this. Now ratio, it's a personal thing and it will depend song by song. Really subtle ratios are around 2:1. If you go up to 3 or 4:1, you'll get some sort of moderate compression. If you've got a rock vocal you really want to crush, then you can start playing in the 10:1 field and above. But I usually compress somewhere around 4:1, and that gives a good amount of volume without it sounding fake and over compressed. So let's hit play again now and dial this compression in.
And you can choose to kick and scream, but things will change.
So at that point, you can hear that it is just impacting the sound a little bit. Now let's talk attack. So what is attack all about? Well, this is how quickly the compressor kicks in. So if you consider the threshold as being when the compressor kicks in, you consider the ratio to be how much compression kicks in once it does actually kick in with the threshold. The attack is then how quickly that happens. So the reason you have an attack is, let's just say you had a few little peaks where it went really loud. What you'd want is to put your attack up here. If you don't want the compressor to kick in every single time you go over a certain volume, you'd have a slow attack there. What a fast attack will do, if you have this right down here, it means that 2 milliseconds, so all it has to be is a loud piece, a loud bit of volume for 2 milliseconds, it's going to compress that. And that's going to make your volume a lot more level because it's going to have the compressor on a lot more. So play with that attack setting. That is just how quickly. So again, just to review, threshold is, will the compressor kick on at all, and at what volume will it kick in? The ratio is how much compression, so how extreme will that compression be when it does actually kick in. Your attack is how quickly the compressor will kick in. So that's why there's 3 dials. Pretty simple to understand, but a lot of folks get a little bit muddled up there and it's hard to sort of understand. You just start throwing your dials around and seeing what happens. As I mentioned, the gain is just a makeup gain. So if you do your compression and you need more volume, you can just turn that volume slider back up again and mix. I usually mix in 100% of compression, but you can mix less if you're finding it over compressed. So let's bring this back into the mix, because that's when you really need to do your compression, when you're listening to your vocal with your other instruments. So all of my tracks are back in the mix now. I've got my compressor set up here. I'm going with a ratio of 4.1:1. I've got the attack at 8 milliseconds. The gain is neutral and we've got 100% mixed in. So now what I like to do is hit play and just play with the compression threshold just to see if I can find a spot where the vocals are sitting nicely in the mix. So let's hit play and do that now.
The only thing that stays the same is that things will change, and you can choose to kick and scream, but things will change.
So that's about where I want it. And what I did there, you'd see that I played with being it right up here, and it kind of became really sibilant, and it really sort of started over compressing. It's really stood out in the mix. And these vocals weren't recorded perfectly, so I don't want them to be over compressed as well. So I found the spot around about here, around about this minus 24 dB for where they will kick in. So let's just come back now, listen to this again, but we'll listen to it without the compressor, and then we'll turn the compressor on to hear the difference.
Is that things will change, and you can choose to kick and scream.
So hopefully you can hear there the subtle difference there. The vocals get a little bit more buried when we don't have this compressor on, and as soon as we turn it on, it lifts the vocals. It just brings it and it levels out the vocals so that the quieter bits and the louder bits are more consistent. And that is the fundamental thing about compression, whether you're using it on vocals or drums or guitars or any of your other instruments here in GarageBand, is you want to use it to balance out your mix. It's a good option. The reason it's on all of these is that it really helps you balance your mix. So if you're finding that you're doing all your volume faders here and your mix is still not being balanced the way you'd like it, jump into compression, learn how to use your compressor, and you're going to get tracks that are going to really start to pop and sound great. If you'd like to check out some more videos, there's 2 linked down below, including a deep dive into compression down there. Subscribe to the channel by clicking or tapping on the Studio Live Today icon, and I'll see you on the next video.